Jazz is the soundtrack to organized crime. It was born in a New Orleans brothel, thrived in Capone, Chicago, Harlem speakeasies, Pendergast, Kansas City. Whether it was Havana or Vegas, if the Mafia was running it, chances are there was a jazz gig to be had. Today, most mobsters and speakeasies are just pretend. But I'm just old enough to have caught the tail end of the true Mafia gig. Well, if I was doing a Mafia gig today, I wouldn't tell you because, well, I don't want anyone fitting me with cement shoes. But I think the statute of limitations are out on these particular Mafia gig stories. Like the time they asked me to put the house band together for Jilly's Saloon, the reopening. Now, if you don't know Jilly's Saloon, it was opened by Frank Sinatra's best friend, Jilly Rizzo, and everybody used to hang out there, including John Gotti. A friend of mine once was playing in a big band. John Gotti came in, laid $100 bill on every guy in the band, and then he requested a song. Fucking guys, no cara mia. Well, apparently the band didn't know it, so the fourth trombone player had to hop a cab to Colony Records, make it back in time before they finished the song they were playing, which I guess he did manage because my friend's around to tell the tale. Johnny Carson actually got thrown down the front stairs of Jilly's just because he flirted with some guy's guma there. They apparently even put out a contract out on his life. Must have been temporary, because as we know, Johnny Carson had a long, illustrious career. Speaking of long careers, it was probably a good thing that the reopening of Jilly's never happened for my own health. But you know what did happen is I ended up getting hired to play in a original street corner doo-wop band called the Chaperones. They'd made their name on Dick Clark's Great American Bandstand. And I didn't know any of their music. Actually, I don't know any doo-wop really at all anyway, but apparently all you have to do to play in a doo-wop band is to play this chord progression I'm playing right now. That's all you need to know. Anyway, their manager had a in with the mob. He was booked their weddings and birthday parties and stuff. I remember doing one pool party out on Long Island. All the guests showed up in Lincoln Town cars with tinted windows. I think my mug is probably in an FBI file somewhere just for having walked into this place. And all the kids were there playing in the pool. They served both steak and lobster. The parents were sitting around pretending to have a good time. You know, I don't think anyone could actually have a good time hanging out with murderers and thieves, but at this party it was clear you better fucking pretend. During one of the set breaks, I sat down on a stool besides the pool, and one of the guys in the Chaperones came to my aid. He came over to me and he said, "Jesse, get the fuck out of that stool, man. That's somebody's seat. You sit there, you're gonna get yourself killed." You know, actually, most of my Mafia gig stories don't come from New York. They mostly come from Boston, where I went to college. Because, you know, as you go back in time, there was more organized crime, so I'm really telling the story in reverse chronology. Like the time that I had a gig at a club in Saugus, Massachusetts. Now, if you don't know Route 1 in Saugus, it's the Vegas Strip of Massachusetts. It's a place that was built up after the war with these massive themed restaurants, a kind of playground for North End Italians. It has a long storied connection to organized crime, Cadillac Frank Salemi survived a mob hit on Route 1. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you the name of this club because the owner of the club, or one of the owners, he is still a prominent Massachusetts politician. But I'll just tell you, the club was run by a bunch of fat button men. They looked like linebackers. They had no necks. You could see the folds of fat through their buzz-cut heads. They wore tight t-shirts with lots of gold chains. The place could be crowded, and sometimes they'd just send us home early. And sometimes the place was empty, and they would have us play late. It didn't seem to have any connection with the clientele. I guess when you're a front, you don't really care much about pleasing the clientele. Speaking of fronts, I used to play at a club in Somerville called the Willow Jazz Club. The Willow was a club where the best jazz artists in Boston used to play. And when they asked my band to come and play there, it really felt like an honor. Now, the club itself had a stage, had a piano, lighting, sound. There were sort of cabaret seats, a cocktail waitress that would come around and take your drink orders. In short, it really was like a typical jazz club. But if you had to take a piss, there was a padded swivel door. And you would go through the swivel door, and on the other side was the scariest looking biker bar you ever saw. So you would do your business in the bathroom as fast as you could, try not to make any eye contact with anybody, and then you would try to get back to the through the swivel door to the jazz club where it was safe. Now, the bass player in my band was a New Bedford fisherman, and he had actually run in some fairly rough circles, so he knew one of the bikers in the biker bar who came out to our side of the club to hang out. And while he was talking, the bass player made the mistake of looking about the room, checking out the girls or whatever, and the biker grabbed him by the nutsack, squeezed down hard, looked at him right in the face and said, "Hey, when I'm talking, you look at me." These guys were friends, mind you. I guess that's just how they talked. Anyway, it turned out these bikers were members of a gang called the Winter Hill Gang, which was the gang run by the infamous Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger has the claim to fame of being played by Jack Nicholson in the movies and Johnny Depp. When Whitey went on the run from the law and disappeared, shortly thereafter they closed down the Willow. Turned out that most of the cocaine money in New England was being funneled through the joint. But interesting enough, the same guys who called us for that gig called us again a little later to play at a new club called Sardinia's. Well, we went to that club, and it was exactly the same as the Willow, down to the padded swivel door. The first gig I ever did that, let's say, was connected to the underworld was at a place called Doc's Cafe in Roxbury, Boston. Now, Roxbury is the most dangerous neighborhood in all of Boston. This place was on the corner of Northampton Street and Harrison Avenue. It had been Sullivan's Tavern right after Prohibition. Then in the 40s, it became Johnny Corey's. In the 70s, the manager, was robbed and shot in the stomach. So then it became Doc's Cafe, a rock club. Then it became a rap club. Somebody got murdered in the club, so they turned it into a Latin dance club. Somebody else got murdered in the club, so they decided to turn it into a jazz club. And yours truly, just a college kid at the time, somehow got the call to come in and put a band together for this club, this jazz club. Well, the bar itself was the original Sullivan's Tavern bar. It was this beautiful Art Deco bar that curved all throughout the room. The back of the room was a stage with a silver tinsel backdrop, kind of 1960s style. And at the bar were well-dressed black gentlemen wearing expensive loud suits, ties with gold accessories, expensive watches and rings. They looked like flamboyant preachers or successful used car salesmen. Turned out they were pimps. The 90s more toned down version of the 70s stereotype. They were there with their hoes, who were dressed in, well, as little as legally possible. You see, the strategy of turning it into a jazz club had successfully kept out the gangster rappers and the Latin gangsters, but it pretty much kept everybody else out. It wasn't like I was going to invite my friends out to this place. It was dangerous. I mean, we were kitty corner to a liquor store the size of a supermarket called Liquorland. Had a giant parking lot with camps of homeless people living in the parking lot collecting bottles and cans. They'd come into Liquorland with just enough money for their Thunderbird, come back out and hang out in the parking lot. One time I even had to step over a guy in front of the club. He was passed out right in front of the club. Had to step over his passed out body to get into the club. Once you're in the club, it felt pretty safe. The only other white guy besides some of the guys in the band was the bartender, but he was the scariest motherfucker you ever saw in your life. And I never saw the shotgun he kept under the bar, but you knew it was there. So we played for the hookers who walked up and down Northampton Street, and when they got tired, they'd take a load off and get a drink at Doc's, and they'd come in there with their pimps, and that was their audience. And honestly, they were a very appreciative audience. We even played a birthday party there for a transsexual hooker named Connie. Well, there's been a lot of gentrification since that time, and now Doc's Cafe is a parking garage for the luxury condos that are across the street. Somebody told me Liquorland is now a Whole Foods. I looked it up online. I think it's actually a pharmacy, but I like the Whole Foods narrative better. Anyway, I hope you like my story about the Mafia gigs I used to do. If you like the story, send me your hush money, your payola, your bagman over to my PayPal or Venmo account. Just don't send me your cement shoes.